San Francisco 49ers back from the bye week this week on the road against the Jacksonville Jaguars. And coming up on today's San Francisco 49ers report, we're going to preview this Week 10 game. But speaking of that, make sure you join us for our watch party. It's always the best place to experience game day outside of being at the actual game. We always have people tuned into the show from worldwide, not just from every pocket of America. And we're going to be going live early, 12 o'clock Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. So turn on those notifications. Therefore, when we do go live, you will be notified. This is actually one of the best games on the NFL Week 10 slate. You look at some of the matchups across the National Football League this week. It is not a good slate, but this one, a really good matchup between two powers. San Francisco in the NFC, Jacksonville Jaguars in the AFC. A lot of you might hear that and say, well, hold on. San Francisco has lost 3 consecutive games. How are they an NFC power? They're still one of the best teams in the NFL. And Jacksonville, what, Chase? They're a power this year. They're one of the top teams in the AFC, and they are a very good squad. And that's why this is a tall test and a formidable test for San Francisco. Niners go into this game as 3-point favorites, and the over-under slated at 46. The Niners, by the way, back on top in the NFC West after the Seahawks got drubbed and dominated by the Baltimore Ravens. Are the Seahawks on fraud watch? I think so. The Niners, because of the better divisional record, do have the tiebreaker. That's how they're back in first place. But that won't last long if the Niners lose again this week against Jacksonville. Seahawks 5-3, as I noted. The Rams, who just signed Carson Wentz on Tuesday, they are 3-6, and the Cardinals 1-8, with Kyler Murray set to return coming off that torn ACL this week. As for the Jags, it's not just a byproduct of this division not being all that competitive. Actually, this division has been pretty solid. C.J. Stroud has been balling for DeMeco Ryans and the Houston Texans. They leveled up that record at 4-4 with the comeback win over the Bucs. The Colts have been a surprise. The Titans now moving forward with starting Will Levis. But the Jacksonville Jaguars 6-2. And this game, important for San Francisco because they've dropped 3 straight. And when you look at the NFC playoff picture, they're slipping a little bit. And the Philadelphia Eagles continue to rise. Philadelphia beating Dallas this past week, going into the bye, 8-1. How about those Detroit Lions, 6-2 this year? Really like them in the preseason. If you watch the program, you know that. They're in that number 2 spot. I know that we're going into week 10 of a 17-game, 18-week schedule. There's still plenty of time to improve upon this. But you look at who the Niners would face if things continue to operate in this direction, a wild card matchup against the Dallas Cowboys. That would be really difficult. So you have the Eagles in that number 1 spot, followed by Detroit, San Francisco, the 3 seed right now, New Orleans Saints in that 4 spot because they're the leaders in the NFC South. And then you have the Seahawks, Cowboys, and the Vikings after that. Other teams in the hunt, Washington and Atlanta, Tampa Bay and Green Bay, the Rams still, Giants and Chicago. They just are on this graphic to be on that graphic. They're dog shit teams. AFC playoff picture. The Jaguars, number 3 seed, just like San Francisco. The Kansas City Chiefs, number 1 spot at 7-2. Baltimore Ravens at 7-2. Jaguars at 6-2. Miami Dolphins, they're on fraud watch as well because they haven't beaten a good team this year. They're 6-3, followed by the Steelers, Browns, and Bengals in those 5-7 positions. Jacksonville coming off a bye week as well. And before the season, we talked about how the Niners were at a rest disadvantage. They had to take on the Browns coming off their bye week. They had to play the Bengals coming off their bye week. San Francisco getting some much-needed rest. Same can be said for Jacksonville. And Trevor Lawrence is playing really good football, and this team, coached by Doug Peterson, is a well-coached team. This is not the traditional Jaguars team that's in the cellar, in the basement in the NFL. And Lawrence, cream of the crop as far as the quarterback position goes. If you were to start a franchise with the quarterback out there and you were drafting, Trevor Lawrence, I think, would go in the top 5. He's completing 68% of his passes this year for nearly 2,000 yards. 9 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, so those numbers a little bit down. Yards per attempt at 7.1. But what's helped elevate his game and why he is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, in my opinion, Jacksonville's done a good job of surrounding him with some really legitimate weapons. Christian Kirk, Calvin Ridley, Evan Ingram, all of these weapons pretty good, and the Niners, they will have their hands full with trying to stop these players. And this is a Niners team that is really struggling in the secondary. Christian Kirk is very quick and explosive. 43 catches this year for 520 yards. Calvin Ridley, Jaguars, they did trade for him coming off that suspension. 33 catches, 451 for him. And then Evan Ingram, some issues with drops, but very athletic tight end who's reeled in 51 catches this year. It's not it. Jacksonville also has a very talented running back who's utilized in a Christian McCaffrey way as a ball carrier and a pass catcher. It's Travis Etienne, who played his college ball with Trevor Lawrence at Clemson when producer Chip was there. 151 carries, 583 yards, 7 touchdowns, but also 27 catches. He's a weapon out of the backfield to catch the rock for 266 yards. So because of all of that, with the talented quarterback that Lawrence is and the weapons that the Jags have, going to be really important for this pass rush to get home. San Francisco's inability to finish and sack the quarterback has led to their defense on that back end getting shredded during this 3-game losing streak. And San Francisco has been disappointing in sacking the quarterback. Only 18 sacks this year as a team. That is tied for 18th in the NFL. If they can't get after Trevor Lawrence and he can sit back there, he will carve you up and the Niners' struggles will continue. Hopefully the acquisition of Chase Young will help this team. He is listed as the starting defensive end opposite of Nick Bosa, and his 5 sacks now leads all players on this Niners roster. He has 5. Nick Bosa, Javon Hargrave, Drake Jackson, they all have 3. Drake Jackson falling to 3rd-string defensive end on this team right now. And then Eric Armstead, after a couple against Cincinnati last week, he has 2.5. San Francisco, going up against this team, also has to fix that secondary. Going up against good quarterbacks like Kirk Cousins, as well as Joe Burrow. In back-to-back losses, Cousins, 35 of 45 for 378 yards. Burrow, 28 of 32 for 365 yards. Those two quarterbacks went a combined 63 of 77, that coming off the heels of losing to P.J. Walker, which started this 3-game losing streak. And this pass defense, they got to get better. And of course, it starts up front. But they have to do a better job on that back end as well with just providing better coverage. In Week 8, Joe Burrow only threw into tight coverage windows 9.4% of the time. That was the 5th lowest mark in Week 8. And then the week before that in Week 7, Kirk Cousins only threw into tight coverage 6.7% of the time. That was the 2nd lowest mark in Week 7. So with that, who you got in this football game? I like the Niners to win it. My score prediction coming up at the end of the show. Type SF for San Francisco, JAC for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Get those game predictions in. If you want to get in on some action, Prize Picks. The only app that you should use. It's the #1 and the largest independently run daily fantasy sports app in North America, and you can get a $100 deposit match if you use our link down below at the bottom of your screen. Hit it right now, prizepicks.com/CLNS. This is daily fantasy sports made easy. You pick 2+ players. You choose more or less on the projected stat lines. Some picks that I like in the early going of this week. I think that Trevor Lawrence has some success with picking up passing yards, and I like the more than 248.5 passing yards against this Niners defense. Dak Prescott, more than 243.5 passing yards, looking for a rebound week against the New York Giants. That's a Giants team that the Cowboys beat 40-0 in Week 1. And then Christian McCaffrey, a week to heal up a little bit, more than 71.5 rushing yards, as I think the Niners get back to what helped them get off to that 5-0 start. A more balanced offense where they throw it and they run it, and Christian McCaffrey, who was banged up, heals up a little bit. PrizePicks.com/CLNS. You can tail me. You can make your own picks. Guys like Meek Mill, comedian Andrew Schultz, they're in on Prize Picks as well. Producer Chip has been crushing it. Back-to-back dubs for him. PrizePicks.com/CLNS. As for how these two teams have fared up to this point, going into Week 10, San Francisco 5-3 right now, and it got off to a picture-perfect start. Win against the Steelers, win against the Rams, a dub against the Giants, a pull-away win against the Cardinals, the most impressive win of all, 42-10 against the Dallas Cowboys. Isn't it crazy that since then, the Niners have not won? A 19-17 loss against the Browns, 22-17 loss against the Vikings, and a 31-17 ugly loss against Joe Burrow and the Bengals. The Niners in this game, cross-country travel, early window, playing in that 1 o'clock Eastern time frame, they have to avoid 4 straight losses. And it's not going to be easy against a Jags team that is very, very good. They got their season started with the 31-10 win over the Colts. They lost a close game to the Chiefs 17-9. Then they lost again to the Texans 37-17. Rebounded from that with the 23-7 dub over the Falcons. They beat the Bills by 5 in London. Then beat the Colts again, sweeping that season series by 17 points against Indy. 31-24 win against the Saints. And then a 20-10 win on the road against the Steelers. A feisty defense there in Pittsburgh, as we know. And the Jags sitting pretty going into the bye. And Trevor Lawrence, especially on deep balls, very difficult quarterback to defend against. His passing grade on passes 20-plus yards, 98.3. That is first among all quarterbacks in the National Football League. So the Jaguars like to throw the deep ball, and what has happened against the Vikings and the Bengals back-to-back weeks leading up to the bye? Niners have struggled to defend the deep ball. As for how the Jags stack up as a team, pretty good unit on both ends of the field, and they can get after the passer, they can sack the quarterback, they can defend the pass, they can defend the run, but they're also good at spinning it and running the football. They are 10th in points per game this year, 14th in yards per game, 19th in yards per play, third down percentage, and red zone percentage. Not great in those areas. So an opportunity for San Francisco's defense, which has struggled in the red zone and on third downs, to get right. Defensively, number 8 in points per game, 23rd in yards per game, 18th in yards per play, 5th third down percentage. So their defense good on third downs. And then in the red zone, they buckle down, which is a big reason why Jacksonville has the record that they do. How the Niners are faring. Even with their struggles, not scoring more than 20 points in this 3-game losing streak, this defense getting cooked, they're still a top 5 unit in points per game, yards per play, third down percentage, and red zone percentage. And defensively, they are still number 4 in points per game, and they're still top 11 in yards per game and yards per play, but they have not been good with their third down percentage and their red zone percentage. With that, we queue up my keys to the game. This pass rush has to get home. If Trevor Lawrence can sit back and survey the field, dissect your defense, and he doesn't have to worry about a Bosa, Chase Young, Hargrave, Eric Armstead coming after him, he will carve you up. So you have to be able to dominate the trenches here with your defensive line that you're paying a lot of money to and even more money to now that you traded for Chase Young. For San Francisco, stop turning the football over. That has halted their momentum. A lot of the Niners' turnovers have happened on the opposing side of the field, wiping away opportunities to put points on the board. And when you turn the football over there, you eliminate being able to score, but it changes the momentum of the game. I also want to see a more balanced offense, partially because the Niners have had to come back from behind. They've become a one-dimensional team that's had to throw it a little bit too much. They're at their best when they can run it and throw it. Brock Purdy, no fourth quarter lapses. Last 8 quarters, he's played well for 6 of them. He's unraveled in the 4th against the Vikings and against the Bengals. And for Steve Wilks, you got to bring it, because if you don't bring it, Niner fans are going to be bringing the heat, and your job could come into question. Predict the score for me. Niners, Jags. We set the stage. Now it's up to you to predict the score. I have my score prediction here. I think the Niners they end this losing streak and they score more than 30 points for the first time since that Cowboys win. Feels like forever ago, right? 33-26 is my final score, and this is a great opportunity to beat a quality team that I think will be in the running to contend in the AFC. Thanks to everybody for watching. Don't forget to join our watch party giving away another autographed Niners jersey for a Niners legend. Stay tuned for that.